Everyone thought he was a good husband, a devoted father. Only I knew the things he said when no one was listening, the kind of words that could choke the air out of your lungs. Only I had felt the chill of what he did behind closed doors. He thought he had it all under control. Thought he could twist the narrative, paint me as an unhinged, unfit mother. But the moment my daughter took the stand and said those words, that smug, triumphant smile on his face shattered in an instant. That afternoon I sat quietly in the corner of a friend's gathering, listening to their laughter and easy chatter, while the air around me felt dense and hard to breathe. Claire, didn't Gordon just get promoted? I saw the post he made, your family at the beach. It looked like a dream. Jennifer lit up as she held out her phone, showing me the photo. We were all smiles in the picture, bathed in golden hour sunlight. Gordon had his arm around my shoulders and Emily nestled between us like the perfect little family. Yeah, I forced a smile. His company assigned him a new project. Kind of like a reward, I guess. So we went to the beach to celebrate. That photo had been carefully curated by Gordon. He waited for the exact moment the sunset lit up the shoreline, adjusted the lighting, smoothed out the exhaustion on my face. In the frame we looked like a loving couple with a sweet daughter completing the picture. The comments poured in, dream family, Gordon is such a stand-up husband. What no one knew was that less than 10 minutes after taking that photo, Gordon walked off, saying he had to take an urgent call from a client. Emily and I were left alone eating lukewarm pizza from a gas station and taking a cab back home. Why didn't Daddy stay to watch the stars with us? Emily had asked. He's busy, I whispered. But I knew better. He wasn't busy. He just didn't want to be there. 4 years now, every night he came home like a ghost, barely a breeze at the door, disappearing into his office, shutting the door behind him until midnight. Sometimes he re-emerged reeking of whiskey. Dinner? I made it alone. Homework? I supervised it alone. Laundry, trash, deliveries? Mine to handle always. Occasionally he'd shuffle out to grab a beer. If he saw me at the stove, apron smeared, hands full, he might glance over, and then just walk away in silence. When I tried to share something, Emily's teacher said she's doing really well, or Mrs. Smith next door invited us for a weekend barbecue, he'd respond with a flat, oh. We didn't argue because he didn't care enough to fight. I spoke, he didn't answer. I asked questions, he grunted, yeah or sure. You want to know what emotional neglect looks like? It's when you shatter a bowl in the kitchen and he doesn't even look up. But out in public, he played the doting husband. Wrapped an arm around me for pictures. Bragged to friends about how my curry was the best in town. Said things like, my wife is amazing. She takes care of everything for me and Emily. I'd smile and nod like I was touched, like I believed it, while my jaw trembled behind closed lips. Emily was always the one who felt it the most. She was young, but her little heart could sense every crack in the room. Every time Gordon came home, she would sit up straight, tuck her toys away, speak in a whisper. She'd learned to hide her feelings like loose threads in a hem, silently, carefully, trying to please a father who didn't even see her. One night, as I was tidying up her sketchbooks, I found a drawing. It was of a tall black figure with pointed horns and a mouth shaped like a jagged frown. Next to it was a small girl with hunched shoulders, holding a pink teddy bear standing in the corner. At the bottom, in faint pencil, it read, "This is when I feel the most scared." I stood under the kitchen light, staring at those lines, my chest tightening like something had hit me square with a blunt force. This wasn't a moment of fear. This was her normal. The next day I gently asked, "Emily, did you draw this?" She nodded and whispered, "Don't worry, Mommy. I won't tell the teacher." I asked why she wouldn't. She pressed her lips together, trying to recall something precisely, then said softly, "Because Daddy said we're not supposed to tell people what happens at home." In that instant something broke inside me. I realized that what I thought was protecting her, my silence, my patience, may have looked like weakness to her. I had been waiting. Waiting for Gordon to change. Waiting for Emily to grow up. Waiting for the right time. But I finally asked myself, had I overestimated the power of endurance? Had my silence given him the permission to keep wounding us? That night I sat on the couch, listening to Gordon's voice echo from upstairs while he talked on the phone. Outside, the night lay still and soundless. And suddenly I knew I couldn't wait anymore. Because Emily didn't just need a mother who stayed. She needed a mother who finally woke up. That night, Gordon said he had to work late again. He said it like it was nothing, didn't even look at me. I stood in the kitchen with a dish towel in my hand, watching him slip on his shoes, grab his keys, texting on his phone as he muttered, "Don't wait up for dinner." I nodded but said nothing. Not even 30 minutes later, just as I was about to call Emily down for dinner, my phone buzzed. A notification. A $327 charge had just cleared from our joint bank account. The note read, Camellia Bay Seafood Grill. I froze. That was the upscale restaurant by the coast. The one I'd suggested for Emily's graduation celebration a few months ago. Gordon had waved it off then, saying it was too over the top. Out of instinct, I pulled up the restaurant's Instagram. They just posted a story, a flashy new video showing how packed the place was. And right there in the corner of the frame I saw it. A familiar hand, a watch I'd bought for his birthday. His hand resting next to a wine glass. Across from him was a woman, young, only half her face visible, but smiling, impeccably dressed with soft pink nail polish. It hit me all at once. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just sat in the kitchen chair, listening to the bubbling soup on the stove, with the sound of Emily's cartoons drifting down faintly from upstairs. I placed my phone screen down on the table and muttered under my breath, "You really are a hell of an actor." It wasn't heartbreak I felt. It was humiliation, raw and searing. He had left this family a long time ago. He just never bothered to mention it. And the worst part? He'd been parading around as the picture-perfect husband the whole time. The next morning I didn't make him breakfast like I usually did. When he came downstairs he frowned. "Dough eggs?" I said nothing. Just looked at him. He poured himself some coffee. Took a sip. And then I couldn't hold it in any longer. "So, how was the seafood last night?" His hand paused midair. A flicker of alarm passed through his eyes. "What?" I didn't give him room to fake confusion. My voice was steady even. "Camellia Bay Seafood Grill. The view was nice. So was the woman sitting across from you." He stood silent for a beat, then actually had the audacity to chuckle. "So now you're tracking my meals? Claire, you seriously need help." My fingers curled around the edge of the table, knuckles white. "Don't you think you owe me an explanation?" He shrugged, unbothered. Set his cup down, his tone slow and deliberate. "Explain what? There hasn't been anything real between us for a long time, has there?" Then came the dagger. "Look at yourself. You spend every waking second obsessing over Emily like a black hole. There's no end to your anxiety. You don't even know how to be a normal woman anymore." I stared at him, stunned. I couldn't believe how shameless he was. "So this is my fault. You cheated because I'm not normal enough." "I never said I cheated," he replied smoothly, playing innocent. "I had dinner with someone who actually listens to me. Someone who appreciates me. If you're gonna break down over that, that's on you." I was speechless. He wasn't just excusing himself, he was painting me as the irrational one. He placed his cup on the counter. His voice softened as if he were offering a professional assessment. "Claire, the truth is, I'm done. You're overly emotional, suspicious, controlling. You drown in your own feelings and pull our daughter in with you. Emily used to be so bright. Now she clings to you like she's scared of the world. Maybe she's reacting to you. Ever thought of that?" I could barely breathe. "What exactly are you saying?" He looked at me calmly like he was closing a sales pitch. "I think we need some time apart. You need to take a hard look at yourself. Honestly, you're not in a place to raise Emily on your own." My hands shook. I fought to keep my voice from cracking. "You're saying, you want custody?" He didn't flinch. In fact, he looked relieved. "It doesn't have to go that far," he said with a shrug. "If you agree to joint custody, we can keep things civil. Split the assets fairly. I don't want to make this ugly." That's when I realized. This had been the plan all along. He didn't just want out. He wanted to break me. Not in a moment of passion or rage, but slowly, carefully, with strategy. He wanted to build a case. Paint me as unstable, unfit. And walk away clean, wearing the badge of dedicated father. I watched him grab his briefcase and walk out the door. For the first time I felt truly afraid. That night, Emily sat on the edge of my bed, clutching her teddy bear. "Is Daddy not coming back again?" I stroked her hair, swallowing the knot in my throat. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's here." She nodded. Then whispered. "I recorded it when he was on the phone. He said, I'm almost rid of her. Just wait." I blinked. You recorded what? She looked down at her bear, then gently pressed a button on its back. A soft beep. It was the birthday gift I'd given her, one with a hidden voice recorder. She looked up at me and said quietly, I just didn't want him to say stuff like that again. And in that moment I knew I couldn't hesitate anymore. If even Emily had started secretly protecting herself, then who was I to keep playing the silent, shrinking woman? If he wanted a clean and easy break, I'd show him what a real fight looked like. Let's see who walks away from this as the winner. The legal notice arrived on a rainy morning. I was packing Emily's lunchbox when the phone rang, a courier at the front door with a delivery. I didn't think much of it as I signed. The envelope felt heavier than regular paperwork, the texture too stiff, too deliberate. When I opened it, my hands froze mid-tear. I could barely process what I was reading. Gordon had filed for divorce. The charges? Irretrievable breakdown of marriage, emotionally unstable spouse, negative long-term impact on the child's development. He was petitioning for sole custody of Emily. My fingers went numb and a single thought echoed in my head. He actually did it. No conversation. No discussion. He had sliced me out of our family like I was an expired contract. Clean, calculated, final. Raindrops had dampened the edge of the paper. I refolded the letter, just as I heard Emily singing upstairs in her room. I couldn't let her see me like this. That afternoon, Gordon showed up with his lawyer. He stepped through the door with a face like granite, all business. Claire, he said, placing documents on the dining table. This is the most civil way to handle things. I'm not asking you to walk away with nothing. But let's be honest. My income sustained this family. So it's only fair I retain the majority of our assets. All I want is for Emily to have a stable home. My throat tightened. A stable home? That only became a concern after you started sleeping with someone else. He looked up, emotionless. Claire, our problems didn't start over one dinner. This has been building for years. You've been erratic, overly controlling. You smother Emily. Look at her, she barely speaks without your permission. Can't you see what you're doing to her? I clenched my jaw. What do you want? To kick us out and parade around town with Emily as your prop? He gave a dismissive chuckle. You're being dramatic. I just want to make sure she's not further damaged by your instability. She needs a parent who can help her open up to the world, not a mother who hides from it. You're unbelievable, Gordon, I whispered, my voice trembling. You never cared. Not when she had a 103-degree fever and you refused to drive her to the ER. Not when she drew that blacked-out picture and you called her weird. And now you're claiming I'm the one making her unwell. He raised both hands in mock innocence. You've got no proof. Courts don't deal in feelings, Claire. They deal in facts. You need to face reality. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just about a divorce. He wanted to strip me of motherhood. Entirely. A few days later, Emily and I packed up what we could and moved into Tina's guest room. When I'd called her, she was silent for 3 seconds. Then she said, "Come over. I'll get the room ready." Tina was the only one who hadn't bought into Gordon's polished image. That night, I sat in her living room, tucking Emily into bed as I tried to explain everything between deep, jagged breaths. Tina listened without interrupting, then set her teacup down with a soft click. "He's laying the groundwork," she said coldly. "He knows you don't have steady income, no public credibility. All it takes is one breakdown and he walks away with everything." I stared at her. "But I'm not breaking down. I've just been backed into a corner." "I know," she said. "But you need to be smart. He's going to play dirty. You have to start documenting everything. From this moment on, every word, every action, every receipt. Audio screenshots, timestamps. You're not surviving anymore, Claire. You're going to war." I nodded slowly. Didn't say a word. That night as I tucked Emily in, she held my pinky finger and asked softly, "Mommy, when can we go back home?" I looked at her face, dimly lit by the nightlight. My chest felt like it had been hit with a hammer. "This is our home now," I said gently. "Wherever you and I are together, that's home." She nodded. Then patted the teddy bear in her arms. The same one I'd given her for her birthday. The one with the built-in voice recorder. Her earlier words echoed in my head. I didn't want him saying those things again, so I pressed record. I had never really paid attention to that little button. But now as I looked at her hugging that bear, a new thought thudded through my chest like a war drum. Maybe that teddy bear held the key. Maybe that was the opening move in the fight to turn this whole damn thing around. I never thought I'd be sitting in a white plastic chair at a psychological evaluation center, like a patient waiting for a verdict, trying to prove I wasn't emotionally unstable, to someone who looked barely 25, asking questions with the warmth of a vending machine. Gordon's lawyer had requested the assessment, citing the need to determine parenting fitness in custody allocation. But I knew better. This was strategy. He wanted the professionals to say what he didn't have to. This woman isn't fit to be a mother. I filled out every form. Sat through the entire interview. Most of the questions were taken straight from some generic diagnostic manual. How do you typically manage stress? Do you experience insomnia or frequent irritability? Has your daughter ever shown signs of fear or avoidance toward you? I sat up straight, carefully measured every word, even slowed my breathing like I was under a microscope, because I knew one wrong look might end up in her report. But then the psychologist looked up and casually asked, "And do you feel that Mr. Gordon has been supportive, protective, or caring toward you?" I almost laughed. Him. My voice turned sharp and cold. The only thing he's given me over the years is silence. Does that count as support? She blinked, lowered her pen. Didn't press further. But I knew. She was writing. And I knew even more. That report wasn't going to land in my favor. A few business days later I got the preliminary results. Mild anxiety traits detected. Tendency toward sleep disturbance. Moderately low self-regulation in the face of major life events. Translation: she's not calm. She's not stable. She shouldn't raise a child alone. I stared at the paper and let out a bitter laugh. He wasn't winning with facts, he was winning with terminology. He had taken my awareness and relabeled it as anxiety. Took my valid emotions and dressed them up as instability. And now this report, this cold clinical document, was attached to his court filings. Even Emily's school had started looking at me differently. Teachers stopped greeting me like they used to. One of Emily's recent drawings was sent home for parental feedback. The teacher's tone was careful, laced with subtle concern. When I brought the drawing back to Tina's house, she had just gotten off work. I laid the paper out on the table. It showed a house and two figures. One dressed in bright colors with a sun on her face, the other crouched in a corner under gray shadows. Tina squinted at it. Damn, this girl can draw better than I could at her age. I gave a weak smile. She told me, "Mommy is the sun. Daddy is the ice cube." Tina looked straight at me. "Claire, you need to snap out of it. Stop thinking patience is going to fix this." I nodded slowly, then asked, "Do you remember the lawyer you mentioned? Can you still connect me?" The next day I walked into the law office Tina had recommended. I was greeted by Ms. Carter, a sharply dressed woman in her 50s with rimless glasses and a voice that didn't waste time. I spoke for over half an hour. She didn't nod, didn't interrupt, just took notes with quick flicks of her pen. When I finally stopped, she set her pen down and asked, "What's your current income?" "No stable income," I admitted. "I've been raising Emily full-time. I teach a part-time community art class once a week." Her brow twitched. "So financially you've been fully dependent on Mr. Gordon?" I nodded. "Until now, yes." She closed her notebook. "Claire, I'll be blunt. You're walking in at a disadvantage. He controls the finances. He has a stable job. He's got that psychological report backing him up." My throat went dry. "So that means I'll lose." She paused, then said, "I didn't say you'll lose. I said if you don't go on the offensive, you don't stand a chance." Her tone wasn't meant to comfort. It was a warning. I took a breath. "What do I need to do?" She looked me in the eye. Her voice calm, direct. "Starting today, stop being the wife who's trying to fix a broken marriage. You're a mother. And you're fighting for your child." For a moment I felt tears sting the corners of my eyes. I nodded. "I'll do everything you say. No more hesitation." When I stepped out of the law office, the wind had picked up. I ducked into a corner stationery store and bought the thickest notebook I could find. On the first page I wrote the date. That was the day I officially went to war. I began sorting through the past few years of my life like I was cleaning up the books of a bankrupt company. I opened my old laptop, scrolled through photo albums on my phone, and dug through drawers filled with receipts that once seemed useless. I was looking for evidence, proof that Gordon had been absent from the hospital visits, missed Emily's birthdays and showed up at family events only to leave 10 minutes later. Every photo, every message I labeled and annotated. At first I was just trying to defend myself. But then I realized, those moments I once brushed off were already telling the full story. When Emily was 5 and burning with a tonsil infection, I was the one who rushed her to the ER alone in the middle of the night. On her 6th birthday, Gordon was flying to Seattle for work. I was the one lighting the candles, organizing the party, taking pictures. At 7, she had a panic episode at school, broke down in tears. 3 calls went unanswered on Gordon's phone before the school finally reached me. Back then I told myself, he's just busy with work. But now I saw it clearly, he never really cared. Tina put me in touch with a school counselor she knew, a warm and experienced woman named Doris. She met with Emily once a week for what she called art-based emotional support. After the first session, Doris sat down with me and said gently, "Emily's very bright, but she holds a lot in. She told me her favorite time is when I'm painting with Mommy and we don't talk." My throat tightened at those words. Doris hesitated before adding, "She doesn't say much about her father, but there was one detail. She said whenever she sees him wearing a black suit, she wants to turn the lights off." I lowered my voice. "Is she afraid of him?" Doris didn't answer directly. She didn't say afraid. What she said was, "I don't like when he's here." That night back at Tina's, I gently asked Emily, "Did you have fun drawing today?" She nodded. "What's your favorite thing to draw?" I asked. She thought for a moment, then said, "Lately I drew our house." I unfolded the drawing. There was a sun, some trees and 2 people. One wore an orange shirt with curly hair, standing on the grass next to a cat. The other was dressed in black, face blank, a big X over the mouth. "Is this me?" I asked, pointing to the one in orange. She nodded, smiling. "You're the sun." "And this one?" I asked, pointing to the faceless figure. She didn't answer. She just pressed the pink teddy bear in her lap. A reminder. I ran my fingers through her hair and said nothing. She had already said everything with her drawings. On the day of the court-ordered mediation, Gordon showed up in a navy suit, burgundy tie and a practiced smile. He took Emily to an ice cream shop holding a gift box and made sure someone took a picture. He posted it online with the caption, "No matter what happens, I'll always be her dad." I saw the photo while Emily was curled up on my bed, coloring. "How was your visit with Daddy today?" I asked. She hesitated. "He was happy at first. He bought me ice cream and said he might take me to the amusement park. And then..." She bit her lip, eyes downcast. "Then he said, 'You have to stand by Daddy, okay? Don't always tell Mommy everything.'" I froze. "Did you record that?" She nodded and reached for her teddy bear. For the first time I opened the Velcro on the back of that pink bear and pulled out the tiny voice recorder inside. We sat on the bed together. She pressed play. Gordon's voice came through, calm but laced with pressure. "You know, right? If you keep listening to Mommy, she's going to keep going crazy. You don't want her to be taken away, do you?" Emily didn't speak, just the sound of her soft breathing. He continued. "That's why you have to help Daddy. Don't say too much. You get what I'm saying." I clenched my fist so tightly my nails dug into my palm. This man didn't just want to destroy me, he was manipulating our daughter, coercing her into playing along with the fantasy of a doting father. Now he was putting on that performance for the world, aiming to win trust, sympathy and custody. But he'd forgotten something. Emily wasn't his puppet. She was already choosing her side in the only way she knew how. I turned off the recorder and tucked the teddy bear back into her arms. Emily looked up and whispered, "Will this help?" I nodded, voice soft but resolute. "Yes. It'll help protect you. And Mommy too." She leaned into me, still holding her marker, still drawing. "Mommy," she said, "are a lot of grown-ups going to be mad at us now?" I paused, stroking her hair. "Maybe." She didn't ask anything else. Just nudged the paper closer to me and said softly, "As long as I'm with you, I'm not scared." I didn't say a word. I just held her tighter. On the day of the hearing, I wore a navy blue dress Tina had helped me pick out. "You don't need to look glamorous," she said, zipping me up. "You just need to look like what you are, a calm, steady mother with strength." I sat across from the plaintiff's table, hands folded neatly in my lap, doing everything I could to stop my fingers from trembling. Gordon walked in wearing the same mask he always wore best, composed, concerned, just the right amount of furrow in his brow. He even gave me a polite nod as if we were old friends at a mediation table, not two people in a custody war where he was trying to rip my daughter away from me. His attorney stood and submitted the psychological evaluation, voice smooth and confident. Based on professional findings, we believe Ms. Claire Wilson has demonstrated prolonged stress response, emotional fluctuation, and potential risk in the context of parenting. Mr. Gordon remains fully willing to uphold his parental duties and offer a stable environment. As I listened, my fingernails dug into my palms. The words sounded clinical, neutral. But to me, they were nails hammered straight into a coffin labeled, "Unfit Mother." Then they called two witnesses, one of Gordon's friends and a former neighbor. Their statements were vague, deliberately restrained, but enough to cast doubt. Sometimes I heard Claire raising her voice when speaking to the child. She always seemed anxious, maybe a bit overprotective. Didn't really let Emily play with other kids much. I turned toward the judge, my mouth slightly open, but I knew this wasn't the moment to speak. Miss Carter placed a steadying hand on mine and whispered, "Let them tell their story. It's fiction. We'll tell the truth." When Gordon took the stand, he played the devoted father to perfection. "I've always respected Claire and what she's done for our family," he said, voice thick with practiced emotion. "But the past couple of years, I've been deeply worried about her. Once I came downstairs and heard her crying. I asked gently what was wrong. She screamed at me, said I ruined her life." He paused, even let his voice break a little. He looked so sincere I almost believed him myself for a second. But it was all a lie. He never asked me what was wrong. He never came downstairs. He walked around me like I was background noise, like a broken radio he couldn't bother to turn off. When I was finally called to the witness stand, Miss Carter gave me a quiet nod. "Ms. Wilson," Gordon's lawyer began, his tone overly gentle, "would you agree that you've had emotional breakdowns in front of your daughter due to stress?" I looked him straight in the eye. "I've cried. I've had hard days. But I have never hurt my daughter. Not once. I've always tried to hold everything inside so she wouldn't have to carry it." He nodded slowly as if expecting that answer, then held up a printed screenshot. "Did you post on Instagram a message saying, 'Some days it's just too hard to be alive'?" My voice dropped, almost a whisper. "I did. That day I had taken Emily to the ER by myself. I called Gordon 3 times, he didn't answer. What was hard wasn't being alive. It was trying to stay strong alone so that Emily wouldn't have to feel how hard it really was." The room fell quiet. But I could already feel it. The weight of the report, the curated testimony. The impression was settling in like wet concrete. Before the lunch break, the judge announced we'd recess for 30 minutes and reconvene in the afternoon to possibly hear Emily's statement. My first reaction was to shake my head. "She's only 8, I whispered. "She shouldn't have to sit on a witness stand." Miss Carter met my eyes, calm and unwavering. "Claire, if everything we say can be twisted into emotion, then we need a voice that can't be twisted." I had no response. Shame welled up in me. The idea of placing my daughter in that position felt like betrayal. But deep down I knew the truth. Emily already understood more than I ever wanted her to. I walked into the waiting room and found her sitting on the couch, drawing. She had sketched a courtroom. One figure in a dress stood on one side, with a tiny sun drawn on her face. Another figure in a suit stood across the room, his face shaded gray. I knelt beside her and asked gently, "Emily, if someone this afternoon asks you what you want to say, would you be brave enough to tell them what's really been happening?" She looked up at me without hesitation. Not even a flicker of fear. "I will." I hesitated. "Are you nervous?" He thought for a second. "I just don't want people saying bad things about you anymore." Her voice was soft. But every word hit me like a bell in a cathedral. She was ready. And so was I, ready to hear her say the things I thought she was too young to remember. Ready to let the truth, finally, come from the only witness who had seen it all. At 2 p.m. the court reconvened. I sat in my seat, palms damp, heart pounding so loud I could feel it echo in my chest. Miss Carter shuffled through a stack of documents beside me. Tina sat in the front row of the gallery and gave me a look. A quiet, steadying glance that said she's ready. Emily wore her favorite dress, the one with the little silver stars on it. She sat beside Doris, her child counselor, clutching her pink teddy bear. Her expression was far calmer than I'd expected. The judge announced that, following an agreement between both attorneys, Emily would be allowed to make a brief statement as a witness, with Doris present at her side. The content would be formally entered into the record. The entire courtroom fell still. I instinctively tightened my grip on the edge of my chair. Doris walked Emily slowly to the witness seat, hand in hand. Her feet barely touched the floor. The teddy bear sat in her lap and a microphone was angled toward her. She glanced up at the judge, her gaze serious, far too serious for a child her age. "Emily," the judge said softly, "you know we asked you to speak today because we want to hear how you feel. Is that okay?" She nodded. "Can you tell us how it feels when you're with your mom and dad? Take your time." Emily took a breath, her voice small but steady. "I like being with Mommy, because she listens to me. And she paints with me." The judge gave a gentle smile. "And your dad?" Emily looked down at her bear. There was a pause. "He's not home much," she said quietly. "And I'm not scared of the dark. I'm scared when he comes home." The air in the courtroom changed. It was as if someone had turned off all the oxygen. "Why, sweetheart?" the judge asked, still gentle. Emily gripped her teddy's paw tighter. "He doesn't like when I talk. If I talk to Mommy too much, he says I'm too loud. Sometimes he slams the doors. And he yells at Mommy and calls her crazy." I saw it then on Gordon's face. The mask finally cracked. He shifted in his seat, started to rise, but his attorney grabbed his arm and forced him down. He opened his mouth, but the judge silenced him with a sharp glare. Emily, unfazed, went on. "He told me that if I said the wrong things, Mommy would have to go away. He said," her voice trembled slightly, "you have to be on Daddy's side. Or else you'll make it worse for her." She steadied herself. "I don't want Mommy to go away. I don't want to live in a house that feels cold." She glanced over at me and the look in her eyes, God, I'll never forget it. It wasn't pleading. It wasn't even afraid. It was the courage of a little girl who had spent too long in silence and had finally chosen to speak. The judge nodded gently, signaling that she could step down. Doris took her hand, ready to guide her back. But then Emily turned back and said, "Can I play a recording for you?" A ripple of surprise moved through the courtroom. "I made it myself. Mommy didn't tell me to. I recorded it." Miss Carter stood immediately. "Your Honor, we were just made aware of this. We will submit the unaltered audio and original recording device for formal review at the next hearing." The judge nodded. "It may be submitted as evidence pending review. That's all for today." Gordon finally snapped. "She's a child. She doesn't understand any of this." The judge slammed the gavel. "Plaintiff, control yourself." As Emily was escorted back, she brushed up beside me and whispered, "Did I do okay?" I pulled her into a hug, fighting hard to keep my voice from breaking. "You did more than okay, sweetheart. You were perfect." The judge announced a recess and scheduled a continuation to review the newly submitted evidence. Legal processes take time. But I knew in that moment, everything had changed. Gordon's polished illusion of the perfect father had finally shattered. Not because I exposed him, but because his own daughter did. With the one voice he never thought would destroy him. A week later, on the day of the supplemental hearing, I arrived early. I sat alone on a hallway bench, both hands wrapped around the little pink teddy bear. When Emily handed it to me that morning, she'd only said one thing. "You can let them hear what he said." Then she went back to her room, shut the door and returned to her drawing, like she had her own quiet battle to finish. When Miss Carter opened the conference room door, I was ready. "This isn't about emotion today," she said. "It's about dismantling his story with his own words." I nodded. She laid out the files, one page at a time. The ER records from the night Emily had a high fever. Screenshots from the birthday party he missed, the messages where he made excuses. And the footage from the living room camera, capturing him slamming doors, throwing glasses, yelling at Emily to shut up. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly. I took a deep breath. More than I've ever been. When court resumed, Gordon still looked composed. He wore his steel blue suit, a dark tie, clean-shaven, every inch the image of control. But today nobody was looking at the surface. Miss Carter stood first. Your Honor, we are submitting 3 new pieces of evidence, all directly addressing the plaintiff's claims regarding an unstable home environment and the mother's alleged incapacity to parent. The judge nodded. Proceed. Exhibit 1. Home surveillance footage. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as the screen lit up. A timestamp showed it was a Friday evening 9 months prior. Emily sat on the floor doing a puzzle. Gordon entered holding a folder and muttered, "Where's dinner?" Moments later, frustrated over a missing remote, he slapped the couch. Then turned toward the kitchen and shouted, "Claire, do you even have a brain?" Emily stood up and shrank into the corner of the sofa. Then came the sharp sound of a glass smashing. Clear, loud, violent. No one spoke. Even Gordon's lawyer hesitated before standing to object. Was this video edited in any way? Ms. Carter presented the chain of custody documentation. The original unaltered file has been submitted and can be independently verified by court technicians. The judge nodded. Continue. Exhibit 2. Personal records. Ms. Carter displayed excerpts from my journals and financial logs. He read them aloud, my handwriting, my words. The night Emily had a fever, I called Gordon 3 times. He was in a meeting. I stayed up all night, holding her on the bathroom floor until her fever broke at 4 a.m. She drew an all-black picture. I didn't put it on the fridge. I knew he'd say, "Why does your kid look like she belongs in a psych ward?" I don't regret being a mother. I regret giving myself to a man who only knows how to perform. The courtroom was still, no outrage, no noise. Just the heavy silence of undeniable truth. Exhibit 3. Witness testimony. Lisa wore a pale trench coat and visibly trembled as she took the stand. Her voice was barely above a whisper at first. Ms. Carter handed her a printout. "Did Gordon send you this message? A woman like her won't last long. She'll snap eventually and drop the custody and the asset fight on her own." Lisa's lips pressed tight. Then she nodded. "He said that, but I didn't think he meant it." "You didn't object either. And you remained in a relationship with him. You spent time with Emily during that period." "Correct." Lisa's gaze dropped to her lap. "Yes." "Were you aware that Gordon tried to coach Emily, told her what to say during the custody evaluation?" Pause. Another nod. As she stepped down, I didn't look at her. There was no rage left. Only clarity. People like her weren't just complicit. They were afraid of being collateral. Final exhibit. The audio recording. Ms. Carter submitted a motion to play the voice recording from the teddy bear. Court technicians connected the recovered chip to the audio system. The room stilled. I held my breath. Gordon's voice came through, gentle as ever, but cold with calculation. "You know, right? If you keep listening to Mommy, she's gonna lose it again. You don't want her taken away, do you?" A long pause. Then, "So you need to help Daddy. Don't say too much. You get what I'm saying." Emily's quiet breathing followed, and the sound of a tiny stifled sob. The recording ended. Silence. I turned to look at Gordon. The color drained from his face. His hands were clenched, his jaw tight. He knew. The mask was gone. The judge adjusted his glasses. "This evidence is admissible. The court will include it in our full review, alongside the new witness testimony and behavioral documentation. The plaintiff's claims will be re-evaluated in light of this material." I gripped the edge of my seat. And for the first time in months I felt something shift. We hadn't just won Emily's heart. We had finally won the court's attention. When it was all over, Emily walked up to me and gently placed the teddy bear in my lap. "It was just a toy now. Its job was done. It had protected us, me and my daughter." She leaned her head against my arm and whispered, "Mommy, I wish Daddy would hug me for real. Not just when there's a camera." I looked down at her. Held her tight. I couldn't speak. She said it quietly. But I knew, everyone heard her. The day the trial ended, Emily and I walked out of the courthouse beneath a sky heavy with rain. We didn't head back to Tina's. Instead, we turned into the little bakery on the corner. Emily said she wanted cream pie, the same treat she used to get every time after her childhood vaccines. I bought 2. When she took her first bite, a dollop of whipped cream stuck to her nose. I reached over to wipe it away, and for the first time in what felt like years I felt still. Not peaceful like all is well, but still like the battle was finally over and I could stop holding my breath. We sat by the window. Across the street, a reporter was interviewing a social worker, microphone raised, searching for a story with more punch. I didn't turn away. I wasn't afraid of being seen anymore. The court's final ruling came 2 weeks later. Full custody, granted to me. Sole legal guardianship. Gordon was given limited visitation rights. Once a month under third-party supervision. The house was reassigned to me as Emily's primary residence, along with a portion of liquid assets for daily expenses. All medical and educational decisions. Mine alone. I was sitting in Miss Carter's office when she finished reading the judgment aloud. It felt like crossing the final mile of a marathon. My legs numb, lungs burning, but somehow I'd made it to the end. "Claire," she said, closing the folder. "You won." I smiled faintly. Maybe. But really he just lost everything himself. She nodded. True. But not everyone makes it far enough to watch someone like him unravel. He was right. If I hadn't had Emily. If Emily hadn't spoken. If I'd given up at any point along the way, none of this would have happened. Gordon showed up at the final custody logistics meeting looking polished as always, but noticeably hollowed out. Lisa didn't show. Word was she cut ties the moment she testified. He entered the room and scanned the faces, like he was searching for someone, anyone familiar. No one greeted him. He sat across from me and for the first time his gaze dropped. Emily didn't speak to him. She just sat beside me holding tightly onto my hand. He finally tried. "Emily, I know you don't understand right now." She turned her head away. I didn't say a word. I wasn't going to help him save face in this awkward farewell. When the meeting ended, he stood and looked at me like it took everything he had. "Claire," he said, "I'm not a completely bad father. I just made some mistakes." I looked at him evenly. "You did. And you can apologize and try to make it right in your own way. But whether Emily forgives you, that's up to her." His mouth opened then closed. He said nothing. Because he finally understood he'd already lost everything that mattered. Days later, someone anonymously leaked the courtroom audio to the press. The internet caught fire. "That's the fake super dad real estate exec? He said that to a kid and still tried to win custody? Textbook manipulator." Gordon's company issued a statement. He was placed on administrative leave, pending an internal investigation. The professional image he once flaunted vanished overnight. Tina called me that evening. "You have your name cleared now," she said. "And he has no mask left to hide behind." I didn't say much. Just nodded. After I hung up, I watched the rain outside finally fall. A soft, steady kind of rain, like a long-delayed cleansing. Emily walked into my room with a new book in her hands. Picture book, hand-drawn, colorful. "Mommy," she said, "this is our story." On the first page she'd drawn a woman in a yellow dress and a little girl holding a pink teddy bear, beneath a sky filled with glittering stars. She titled it The Sunshine House. I asked, "Why that name?" She answered, "Because the sun only comes out when we're together." I smoothed her hair and held her close. And in that quiet moment I realized, this war hadn't just left scars. It had cleared a space. A clean, open space. Ours. Where no one could take away our voice. Where even the hardest days could grow something new. Where we could begin again. That fall I stepped back into a classroom for the first time in years. This time with a paintbrush in hand, standing in front of a group of wide-eyed 7- and 8-year-olds. The room was part of a city community art center. The tables were a little worn, the curtains faded at the edges, but when the sunlight poured through the windows, it carried a quiet kind of warmth that needed no explanation. I had finally secured a full-time job, steady, meaningful, and flexible enough to still give Emily what she needed most. Time with me. "Today," I said with a smile, "we're going to draw my home." The kids buzzed with excitement, unrolling sheets of paper, pencils and markers clattering across the tables. I picked up my own paper and began to draw. Emily sitting on our couch, her pink teddy bear in her arms. Me beside her, one hand holding hers, the other holding a paintbrush. Just a few months ago I couldn't have imagined a life this quiet. This whole. Gordon's supervised visitation schedule had lasted 2 sessions before Emily said she didn't want to go anymore. Under the counselor's guidance, she had the right to say no. Gordon sent a few emails asking for more contact. I didn't reply. I forwarded them to my lawyer. He didn't follow up again. Word was his job had officially been terminated. All the labels he clung to, model husband, responsible father, he'd stripped them away himself, one lie at a time. Now all that remained was silence and absence. Me. I began rebuilding. Not the life we had, but something entirely our own. Tina helped me apply for a small grant through a local nonprofit. That's how Sunshine House was born. Named after Emily's picture book. We converted our living room into a creative workshop. Each week, 3 to 5 women came in. Women who had also walked through broken relationships, custody battles, and emotional wreckage. We painted. We talked. We did breathing exercises. Sometimes we just sat quietly and sipped tea. No one was forced to tell their story. But somehow we all understood each other without saying much. Emily began to heal too. She made friends at school. Joined the after-school writing club. She started drawing cartoon animals and sticking them to our fridge, as if determined to color in every shadow that had ever lived in our home. One day she sat beside my work table doodling quietly. Then she looked up and asked, "Mom, are you still afraid of Daddy?" I paused, caught off guard. "You used to be so careful," she said. "Careful how you walked. How you talked. But now, you're different." I smiled. "I wasn't afraid of Daddy," I told her. "I was afraid of losing you." She leaned in and hugged me. "You're not gonna lose me," she said. "Not ever." In that moment, something inside me, something that had been pulled tight for years, finally, quietly let go. That night, we curled up on the couch and watched an old movie together. She fell asleep against me, her face still soft with childhood, but her presence steady and sure. And I realized, I hadn't just won a case. I hadn't just escaped a man. I had won back my daughter. I had reclaimed my voice. My life. This time I would lead us forward. This time we were going to live something better. Together.